Beneath the shattered streets and silent ruins, whispers linger, stories of courage entwined with shadows of fear. What secrets lie buried in the ashes of war? Tonight, we unlock a door long sealed, stepping into a world where every choice carved a path between salvation and despair. Dare to listen closely, for some truths are better left hidden, yet here, the silence will finally speak. In the waning summer of 1939, as Europe teetered on the brink of war, a young Polish mathematician named Elena Kowalska found herself caught in a world she had never imagined. Born in Krakow to a family of educators, Elena had a gift for languages and numbers that marked her as exceptional from a young age. But when Nazi tanks rolled into Poland, her peaceful life was shattered. Forced to flee westward, she escaped to England with little more than hope and a fierce determination to fight the enemy by any means necessary. Elena's arrival in Britain came at a time when the British government was scrambling to assemble the greatest minds to crack a problem that seemed insurmountable: the Nazis' Enigma machine. This device encoded German military communications with layers of complexity, and the Allies' inability to decode these messages was costing lives. Bletchley Park, a grand country estate north of London, became the nerve center of a secret operation. Its sprawling rooms filled with scholars, linguists, chess champions, and mathematicians all tasked with breaking the code. Elena was soon recruited to join this eclectic group, drawn to the war effort by her knowledge of Slavic languages and her experience with complex ciphers. But she was entering a world cloaked in secrecy and pressure unlike anything she had faced. Work at Bletchley was relentless, the hours long, and the stakes unimaginable. No one outside the estate knew what went on there, and even inside, the codebreakers were sworn to silence. Her earliest days were spent poring over intercepted messages, searching for patterns in strings of letters that seemed utterly random. The German military changed the Enigma settings daily, using rotors that shifted constantly and plugboards that scrambled letters in new ways each morning. To make matters worse, every message was deliberately designed to resist cryptanalysis. Yet, Elena's sharp mind and linguistic intuition gave her an edge. She noticed subtle consistencies in the way German officers communicated orders, certain recurring phrases, and habits that betrayed the machine's mechanical nature. The breakthrough came after weeks of frustration when Elena proposed a radical idea, focusing on stereotyped language used in weather reports sent each morning. She argued that because these messages followed a predictable format, they could serve as cribs, or known plaintext, to unravel the Enigma settings for that day. Her suggestion, initially met with skepticism, soon proved vital. It allowed her team to reduce the impossible task of cracking the Enigma to a solvable puzzle. Working alongside legendary figures such as Alan Turing and Dilly Knox, Elena helped develop a new electromechanical machine called the bomb. This device could simulate thousands of Enigma settings rapidly, accelerating the decoding process. Every decrypted message was a lifeline, revealing troop movements, submarine patrols, and planned attacks. The information was so sensitive it was known as ultra, kept under the tightest secrecy. Though her work was hidden from public view, Elena's personal sacrifices were profound. The constant pressure, the isolation, and the weight of secrecy took a toll on her mental health. Her family in Poland had been caught in the horrors of occupation. She learned through whispered rumors and intercepted broadcasts of their suffering in ghettos and camps. Yet, she persisted, driven by a belief that her efforts could shorten the war and save countless lives. In the spring of 1941, as the Luftwaffe unleashed the Blitz on London, Bletchley Park intensified its operations. Bombing raids forced codebreakers to relocate to underground bunkers during air attacks. Elena's resolve never wavered. She would often be the last to leave the room, her eyes scanning cryptic messages long after others had fallen asleep. The tension was palpable. A single error in interpreting a message could mean disaster for Allied convoys or soldiers on the front. Elena also witnessed firsthand the contributions of women who formed the backbone of Bletchley's success. From operators who ran the bomb machines to clerks transcribing intercepted signals, women's roles were crucial yet largely unacknowledged at the time. Their work, often tedious and repetitive, was done under immense stress, and Elena formed close bonds with many of these women, sharing moments of laughter, frustration, and solidarity. One of the most pivotal moments came in June 1941 when Elena's team decrypted messages revealing the planned launch of Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The early warning allowed the Soviet Union to prepare defenses that would later prove vital in the bloodiest theater of the war. Though the political alliances were complicated and fraught, the shared information underscored the importance of international collaboration in the fight against Axis aggression. As the war dragged on, Bletchley Park's success became a crucial factor in turning the tide. The Battle of the Atlantic, a struggle to protect convoys from German U-boats, depended heavily on the ability to anticipate submarine movements. Elena worked tirelessly to decode naval communications, saving thousands of lives from the deadly wolf packs prowling the Atlantic. But the secrecy surrounding Bletchley Park meant that Elena, like her colleagues, lived with a heavy burden. The work was classified as top secret, and even close family and friends were unaware of her role. It was only decades later, after the government declassified much of Bletchley's activities, that her contributions began to be recognized. After the war, Elena remained in England, dedicating herself to teaching mathematics and inspiring a new generation to embrace logic and critical thinking. She kept the memories of Bletchley Park close but spoke little of the war, believing that the real victory was the lives saved and the peace won. The story of Elena Kowalska is emblematic of the countless unsung heroes behind the scenes of World War II. Her intelligence, courage, and quiet determination helped crack the secrets of Nazi Germany, proving that sometimes the greatest weapons are the minds willing to fight in silence. Today, Bletchley Park stands as a testament to the power of intellect and collaboration in the face of tyranny. Elena's legacy lives on not only in the history books but in every codebreaker, cryptographer, and mathematician who follows in her footsteps, guardians of secrets who change the course of history one puzzle at a time. The German invasion of France in May 1940 had shattered the hopes of millions. For Marc Dubois, a mild-mannered schoolteacher in a small Normandy village, the swift collapse of the French army and the signing of the armistice marked the beginning of a nightmare. Yet, it was also the beginning of a quiet revolution, one that would transform ordinary citizens into fighters in the shadows. Marc's life before the war had been simple, teaching literature to children, tending a modest garden, and dreaming of peace. But the reality of occupation soon crushed those dreams. Nazi soldiers patrolled the cobbled streets, curfews tightened, and French newspapers spewed propaganda alongside German orders. It wasn't long before Marc realized that submission was not an option. The resistance in France was far from a single organized force. It was a tapestry of diverse groups, each with its own methods and motivations. Marc found himself drawn to a small cell of local partisans who met in the basement of an abandoned bakery. Their leader, a fiery woman named Claire, believed that information was the key to liberation. Marc's ability to read and write coded messages made him invaluable. The group began by gathering intelligence, observing German troop movements, noting train schedules, and recording conversations overheard in cafes. Each piece of information was carefully encoded and sent via secret radio transmissions to London, where the Special Operations Executive, SOE, coordinated support for underground movements. The risks were enormous. The Gestapo was ruthless, and any hint of dissent could lead to torture or execution. One of Marc's earliest missions was to sabotage a railway line used to transport weapons to the front. Under the cover of darkness, he and fellow partisans planted explosives beneath the tracks. The resulting derailment delayed shipments for days, buying precious time for the Allies. The success emboldened the group but also raised the stakes. German patrols increased, and the village lived in constant fear of reprisals. Marc's dual life was a precarious balance. By day, he taught children who still clung to innocence amid war's horrors. By night, he became a ghost in the streets, slipping past checkpoints and into forests where resistance fighters gathered. He forged alliances with other cells, coordinated arms drops from Allied aircraft, and helped smuggle refugees across the English Channel. The summer of 1944 brought a surge of hope, the long-awaited D-Day invasion. Resistance groups across Normandy were ordered to intensify sabotage operations, disrupting German communications and slowing reinforcements. Marc's network played a critical role in transmitting accurate intelligence about troop positions to the advancing Allied forces. But the cost was steep. The village suffered brutal reprisals. Homes were burned, families torn apart, and comrades lost to Gestapo arrests. Mark himself was captured once but managed a daring escape, aided by a sympathetic French guard. The scars of these experiences ran deep, a constant reminder of the fragile line between survival and sacrifice. Amid the chaos, Mark found moments of quiet humanity. He shared stolen bread with Claire beneath starlit skies, and they spoke of a future free from oppression. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of war, symbolized the resilience and hope that kept the resistance alive. The liberation of France in August 1944 was a bittersweet victory. The Nazis retreated, but the country lay in ruins. Mark returned to his schoolhouse, now battered and scarred, to teach a new generation about freedom and responsibility. The underground heroes, once nameless and faceless, emerged from shadows into the light of history. The story of Mark Dubois and his comrades captures the essence of the French resistance, ordinary people transformed by extraordinary circumstances. Their courage in the face of overwhelming odds, their commitment to justice and liberty, and their willingness to risk everything in silence shaped the course of the war and inspired generations to come. Through personal letters, recovered propaganda, and eyewitness testimonies, this tale reveals the human heart of a movement often overshadowed by grand battles and political maneuvering. It is a reminder that even in the darkest times, the whispers of resistance can grow into a roar that topples empires. The city of Stalingrad in the late summer of 1942 was a place on the edge of apocalypse. Dust swirled through streets shattered by relentless bombing, the air thick with smoke and the bitter taste of fear. Amid the rubble and ruin, Soviet tank commander Anatoly Petrov gripped the controls of his T-34, his breath visible in the freezing air, eyes sharp beneath a frostbitten brow. Anatoly had grown up in a small village outside Moscow, where tales of heroism from the Great Patriotic War had shaped his youth. When Operation Barbarossa began, he was just a cadet. Now, as commander of the 3rd Tank Battalion, he was entrusted with defending one of the most crucial cities on the Eastern Front. The stakes could not have been higher. Stalingrad was more than a strategic industrial hub, it was Stalin's namesake, a symbol of Soviet resilience and pride. The German offensive, led by General Friedrich Paulus, aimed to crush the city and open the gateway to the oil-rich Caucasus. But what awaited the Wehrmacht was a defense unlike any other. The fighting was close and brutal, a chaotic clash of steel and fire in factories, apartment blocks, and the twisted remains of bridges. Anatoly's unit faced constant assault from Messerschmitt fighters, artillery barrages, and panzer divisions, all while struggling to maintain supply lines in the biting cold. Each day was a test of endurance. Anatoly's tanks prowled the shattered streets, firing into enemy positions before retreating under withering fire. His crew, Nikolai, a grizzled mechanic, Sergei, a sharpshooter, and Ivan, the youngest, barely 20, shared moments of camaraderie amid the carnage. They scrounged for fuel, repaired battered engines, and held fast even when surrounded. The psychological toll was immense. Letters from home were rare, morale fragile. Anatoly found solace in fleeting memories, the warmth of his mother's kitchen, the laughter of his younger sister, and the hope that their sacrifice would not be in vain. The harsh winter of 1942-43 brought no respite. Frostbite claimed fingers and toes, hunger gnawed at their bellies. But surrender was never an option. Behind the frontline chaos, Soviet commanders orchestrated a desperate plan, Operation Uranus, to encircle the German 6th Army. The surprise counteroffensive exploited weak Romanian and Hungarian allies guarding the flanks, cutting off supplies and sealing the fate of Paulus's forces. For Anatoly and his comrades, the encirclement meant a shift from defense to attrition warfare, battling starvation, disease, and dwindling ammunition. One night, as snow blanketed the city, Anatoly led a daring raid to reclaim a factory seized by the Germans. The streets echoed with gunfire and explosions, the ground trembled beneath the roar of tanks. Amid the smoke, Anatoly spotted a young German officer trapped under debris. Against orders, he pulled the man to safety, a fleeting act of humanity amid relentless violence. The Battle of Stalingrad became a crucible that tested every fiber of Anatoly's being. Reports from the front told of brutal house-to-house fighting, civilians caught in the crossfire, and entire battalions wiped out. Yet, the Soviet resolve hardened. Soldiers and citizens alike rallied, their will tempered by the belief that their stand was shaping the fate of the world. When General Paulus finally surrendered in February 1943, Anatoly was among those who witnessed the bitter end of the siege. The price had been staggering, nearly 2 million casualties, the destruction of a city, and scars that would never fully heal. But the victory marked a turning point. The Axis powers were no longer invincible. After the war, Anatoly returned home a decorated hero, though haunted by memories of friends lost and battles fought in frozen shadows. He shared his story with a new generation, emphasizing sacrifice, courage, and the costs of war. The steel tanks rusted away, but the legacy of Stalingrad endured, a testament to human endurance and the indomitable spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. This story of Anatoly Petrov's stand at Stalingrad is a window into one of history's fiercest and most consequential battles. It reveals the harsh realities of war beyond grand strategies, the men who fought in frozen ruins, the friendships forged in fire, and the shadows cast by sacrifice that shaped the course of World War II. In February 1945, as the Pacific War raged on, the tiny volcanic island of Iwo Jima became the stage for one of the bloodiest battles in history. Among the thousands of young American Marines who landed on its black sands was Jack Sullivan, a fictional corporal from Ohio whose personal diary would remain lost for decades, until recently discovered in a dusty attic, revealing a vivid portrait of courage, fear, and brotherhood amid hellish combat. Jack's journey to Iwo Jima began long before the first wave of amphibious tanks crashed ashore. Raised in a small Midwestern town, he had enlisted with a sense of duty but little understanding of the horrors to come. His diary opens with hopeful entries, letters to his sweetheart back home, thoughts of the farm he dreamed of returning to. But those pages quickly give way to stark reality. The initial landing on Iwo Jima was met with a hailstorm of Japanese artillery and machine gun fire. Jack describes the chaos as men fell around him, the beach slick with blood and sand. The volcanic ash made movement difficult, and the island's rugged terrain offered the Japanese defenders a network of caves and bunkers from which they launched relentless counterattacks. Throughout the battle, Jack's diary chronicles daily skirmishes, the grinding exhaustion, and the small acts of humanity that kept hope alive. He wrote of Sergeant Harris, who shared rations despite the scarcity, and Private Lee, whose humor eased the terror during quiet moments. The diary captures the fear of kamikaze attacks and the devastation wrought by naval bombardments that turned the island into a charred wasteland. One entry stands out, a description of the famous flag raising atop Mount Suribachi. Jack recounts hearing the distant cheers as the stars and stripes were hoisted, a symbol that lifted the spirits of troops amidst carnage. Yet he also noted the complex feelings it stirred, pride mixed with grief for fallen comrades who would never see the moment. The struggle on Iwo Jima was not just a physical battle but a psychological one. Jack's words reveal moments of doubt and despair, the tension between duty and survival. He grappled with the brutal necessity of killing and the yearning for peace. His diary also touches on encounters with Japanese soldiers, fierce foes who fought with desperation, sometimes leading to brief, haunting moments of respect amid conflict. As the battle wore on, Jack's entries grew scarcer, reflecting the increasing intensity and toll on his unit. He described the approaching end with a mixture of relief and sorrow. Victory came at an enormous cost, nearly 7,000 American lives lost and many more wounded. The island's strategic value lay in its airfields, essential for the planned invasion of Japan's mainland. After the war, Jack returned home, forever changed. He never spoke much of Iwo Jima, carrying the memories silently until his death decades later. His diary, rediscovered by his grandson, offers historians and readers a poignant, personal window into a conflict often remembered only in grand military terms. This story not only honors Jack Sullivan and his comrades but also explores the broader context of the Pacific theater, the strategic importance of islands like Iwo Jima, the emergence of kamikaze tactics, and the brutal preparations for a war's final, devastating phase. It is a testament to the human spirit caught in the echoes of global conflict and the enduring legacy of those who fought in the shadow of war. April 1945. The city of Berlin was a labyrinth of destruction, its grand boulevards turned to rubble, the air thick with smoke and the bitter scent of defeat. Inside a once opulent apartment near the Tiergarten, Friedrich Weber, a disillusioned Wehrmacht officer, scribbled frantic notes into his journal, capturing the collapse of a regime that had promised glory but delivered ruin. Friedrich had risen through the ranks, a proud soldier initially swept up by the Nazi fervor that gripped Germany in the 1930s. But as the war dragged on and atrocities came to light, his conviction wavered. Stationed in Berlin during the final siege, he witnessed firsthand the desperation that gripped the Nazi leadership. Adolf Hitler ensconced in his bunker, issuing futile orders as Soviet artillery pounded the city's defenses. The Battle of Berlin was a brutal urban war fought block by block. Friedrich's unit was tasked with defending key government buildings, often facing Soviet troops mere meters away. The streets echoed with gunfire, explosions, and the cries of the wounded. Civilians, caught in the crossfire, sought shelter in basements and subway tunnels, many succumbing to hunger and disease. In his journal, Friedrich recorded the crumbling morale among soldiers and civilians alike. Rumors of Hitler's death circulated, and whispers of surrender grew louder. He described encounters with members of the German resistance, including officers involved in the failed July 20th plot, who still harbored hope for a negotiated peace. One of Friedrich's most harrowing entries details the final hours in the Führer bunker. He recounts the chilling scene of Hitler's last testament, the arrival of Eva Braun, and the grim decision to commit suicide. The chaos that followed was palpable, commanders scrambling to flee or fight to the last, the city in flames, and the Soviet flag rising over the Reichstag. Amid the devastation, Friedrich also documented acts of compassion, soldiers helping wounded comrades, neighbors sharing scarce food, and even brief moments of levity in the face of despair. Yet, the shadow of the Holocaust loomed large. Friedrich, who had witnessed deportations and the horrors of concentration camps, grappled with guilt and regret over his role in a regime responsible for unparalleled atrocities. After Berlin fell, Friedrich was taken prisoner by the Soviets. His journal ends abruptly with a note of uncertainty, a man caught between worlds, uncertain if his country could ever rebuild from the ashes or atone for the sins committed in its name. The fall of Berlin marked the definitive end of Nazi Germany and World War II in Europe. The city's ruins symbolized not only military defeat but the collapse of ideologies fueled by hatred and oppression. Friedrich Weber's story offers a rare, intimate perspective on the final days, the crumbling facade of power, the human cost of fanaticism, and the fragile hope for redemption amid ruin. Through his journal, this narrative explores the complexity of those last moments, the blend of loyalty and disillusionment, the clash between duty and conscience, and the harsh realities faced by soldiers and civilians trapped in a city besieged. It serves as a solemn reminder of war's devastating end and the lessons etched into history's darkest chapter. As the dust settles and the echoes fade, the weight of what we've uncovered presses heavy. These tales are not just history, they are warnings etched in blood and silence. In the heart of darkness, where humanity and horror collided, the past refuses to rest. Remember, some doors once opened can never be closed again. What we've seen tonight is only the beginning of the shadows that still haunt us all.